They called me too fat to be a bridesmaid. What happened at the honeymoon shocked everyone. Revenge backfired, invitation, and expectations. The elegant cream envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I finally gathered the courage to open it. I already knew what was inside. My sister Melissa had texted me weeks ago that the wedding invitations were being mailed out. But something about seeing that formal card, embossed with silver foil and wrapped in a satin ribbon, made everything feel suddenly real and intimidating. Melissa was marrying James, her college sweetheart and boyfriend of 6 years. They were the perfect couple, both tall, athletic, and ambitious. James was a rising investment banker, and Melissa had recently made partner at her marketing firm. Their Instagram feeds were filled with marathon finish lines, exotic vacations, and perfectly plated meals at Michelin-starred restaurants. The wedding was set to be the social event of the season among their circle of equally successful friends. As her only sister, I had always assumed I would be Melissa's maid of honor. We had grown up planning each other's weddings, promising to stand beside one another on our big days. Despite our 4-year age gap and increasingly different lifestyles, that childhood promise had always felt unbreakable to me. When I finally opened the invitation, a smaller card fell out. You are cordially invited to the bridal shower. Nothing about being a bridesmaid, let alone maid of honor. I immediately called Melissa, confused and a little hurt. "Oh, Jen, I've been meaning to talk to you about that," Melissa said, her voice carrying that slightly condescending tone she had developed over the years. "I've decided to ask Vanessa to be my maid of honor." Vanessa was Melissa's college friend and current workout buddy. They took the same 5 a.m. spin classes and shared protein smoothie recipes on their social media. "But I thought we always said we'd be each other's maids of honor," I replied, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "That was when we were kids, Jen," Melissa sighed. "Besides, Vanessa has been helping me plan everything for months now. She knows all my vendors, my vision board, everything." The silence stretched between us, filled with all the things I wanted to say, but couldn't find the words for. I had been busy working overtime at the hospital where I worked as a nurse, often pulling double shifts during the ongoing healthcare staffing crisis. I had assumed Melissa understood that my absence from wedding planning was due to my demanding job, not lack of interest. "I was thinking," Melissa finally continued, "maybe you could still be a bridesmaid, but I need to talk to you about that in person. Can you come over for dinner this weekend? James will be at his bachelor weekend, so it'll just be us girls." That Saturday, I arrived at Melissa's impeccable downtown condo with a bottle of wine and a forced smile. I had spent extra time on my appearance, applying makeup carefully and choosing my newest outfit, a blouse and jeans that actually fit my size 16 frame comfortably. At 5'4" and 195 pounds, I had always been the bigger sister, compared to Melissa's 5'9" and athletic 140 pounds. But in recent years, the difference between us had become more pronounced as I struggled with stress eating during my demanding hospital shifts. Melissa greeted me with an air kiss, careful not to smudge her lip gloss. "You look nice," she said, in a tone that suggested surprise. Dinner was a tense affair. Melissa served grilled chicken salads with dressing on the side, pointedly mentioning that she was being good before the wedding. I bit my tongue and forced myself to ignore the implications in her comments. Finally, over dessert, berries for her, a small slice of cake for me, Melissa got to the point. "So, about the bridesmaid thing," she began, setting down her fork deliberately. "I would love for you to be part of my bridal party, Jen. You're my sister, and I want you there with me." Relief washed over me. "I'd love that, Mel. I know I haven't been able to help much with planning, but I can definitely step up." "But," she interrupted, her voice sharpening, "I need you to commit to making some changes before the wedding." "Changes?" I asked, though I already knew what was coming. Melissa reached for her phone and pulled up a photo board. "These are the bridesmaid dresses I've chosen," she said, showing me a collection of sleek, form-fitting satin gowns in a pale blush color. They were beautiful, but clearly designed for bodies nothing like mine. "The thing is, Jen," Melissa continued, her voice now taking on that faux sympathetic tone I'd heard her use with difficult clients. "These dresses only go up to a size 12, and they're custom made, so they can't be altered much. Plus, I've planned the whole aesthetic around a certain look, and I need all my bridesmaids to fit that vision." My cheeks burned with humiliation. "So, you're saying I need to lose weight to be in your wedding?" "I'm saying I want you to be the healthiest, happiest version of yourself for my big day," Melissa replied smoothly. "And yes, that would mean losing some weight, about 50 pounds ideally, to fit into the dress properly." 50 pounds? In 5 months? Mel, that's not even healthy. "I know it sounds like a lot, but I've actually arranged everything for you." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a meal plan, a gym membership to her exclusive fitness club, and a schedule of appointments with her personal trainer. "I'll cover all the costs. Think of it as an investment in both of us looking amazing in the wedding photos." The room seemed to spin around me. My own sister was telling me I wasn't acceptable as I was, that to stand beside her on her wedding day, I needed to fundamentally change my body in a way that was neither realistic nor healthy. "What if I can't lose that much weight in time?" I asked quietly. Melissa's smile tightened. "Then I think it would be better if you attended as a guest. I'm sure you understand, Jen. This is the most important day of my life, and everything needs to be perfect." I left shortly after, the folder of weight loss materials untouched on her dining table. In my car, I finally let the tears come, hot and angry, as I realized what my sister was really saying. I was an embarrassment to her. My body was a problem to be fixed or hidden away. That night, I made a decision. I would not be altering my body to fit my sister's vision. But I also wouldn't miss her wedding. I would attend as a guest, hold my head high, and try to maintain what was left of our relationship. What I didn't know then was that my sister's wedding would trigger a chain of events that would change everything between us, and that my small act of self-respect would be misconstrued as the revenge that destroyed her marriage before it had truly begun. The pre-wedding drama. The months leading up to Melissa's wedding were tense. I declined her generous offer to transform my body and told her I would attend as a guest. She pretended to be understanding, but the hurt and disappointment in her voice were clear. Our parents tried to mediate, suggesting alterations to the bridesmaid dresses or different styles that would accommodate my size, but Melissa was adamant about her vision for the wedding. "You always take Jen's side," she accused our mother during a particularly heated family dinner. "This is my wedding, and for once I want things my way without having to make concessions for her." The "her" was spoken with such disdain that even our father, who typically stayed out of our sisterly disputes, looked uncomfortable. "Nobody's taking sides, Melissa," he said carefully. "We just want both our daughters to be happy." "Well, I'd be happier if Jen could show some commitment to her health for once in her life," Melissa snapped. "Is it really so much to ask that she try to lose some weight for my special day?" I sat there, pushing salmon around my plate, feeling like I was 13 again, the chubby sister who was always the family problem to solve. Despite being a registered nurse with a master's degree, despite saving lives during 12-hour shifts while Melissa crafted marketing campaigns for luxury watches, in this family dynamic, I was still defined by the space my body occupied. As the wedding approached, I found myself being systematically excluded from other pre-wedding activities. I wasn't invited to the final dress fittings. My name was mysteriously absent from the bachelorette weekend guest list. When I called Vanessa, the maid of honor, to ask about it, she was awkwardly apologetic. Melissa thought you might be uncomfortable. With all the activities planned. She explained vaguely. What activities? Bar hopping? Dancing? Eating at restaurants? I do all those things, Vanessa. Well, we're also doing a spa day with some, couples yoga and a beach photo shoot. I got the picture. My body didn't fit the aesthetic. Again. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding. I had purchased a lovely navy blue dress for the occasion, elegant, flattering, and within the color scheme Melissa had specified for family members. I texted her a photo, wanting to make sure it was appropriate. Her response came hours later. Could you find something with more coverage and maybe in black? It's more slimming. Something in me snapped. I had spent my entire life accommodating my sister's embarrassment about my size. I had listened to her backhanded comments about my eating habits, endured her constant health tips, and watched her deliberately exclude me from parts of her life where my body might be visible to her sophisticated friends. But I was done being the family embarrassment. I called James. James and I had always had a cordial relationship. He was polite and seemed genuinely fond of me, often asking about my work at the hospital with real interest when Melissa quickly changed the subject. I had never reached out to him directly before, but something told me he might not be fully aware of the dynamic between Melissa and me. Hey, Jen, everything okay? He answered, sounding surprised to see my name on his caller ID. Not really, James. I need to talk to you about something, and I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing, but I can't stay silent anymore. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes the next day. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, careful to stick to facts and specific incidents rather than my interpretations or feelings. I want you to know what kind of person you're marrying, I began, my hands wrapped tightly around my coffee mug. Melissa has systematically excluded me from her wedding because of my weight. She offered to let me be a bridesmaid only if I lost 50 pounds in 5 months, which any medical professional will tell you is neither healthy nor realistic for most people. James's expression shifted from confusion to concern as I detailed the events of the past few months. The exclusion from pre-wedding activities, the constant body-shaming comments, the most recent text about my dress. I'm not telling you this to cause problems, I assured him. I love my sister, despite everything, but I'm worried about the values she's displaying and the kind of partner she might be if physical appearance is this important to her. James was quiet for a long moment. I had no idea, he finally said. I mean, I knew Melissa could be appearance conscious, but this is extreme. It's who she is, James, and you should know that before you marry her. He nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me, Jen. I need to think about this. I left that meeting feeling both relieved and terrified. Had I just sabotaged my sister's relationship weeks before her wedding? Was this revenge for her treatment of me? Or was I genuinely concerned about James marrying someone with such shallow values? The answer, I would soon learn, was complicated. The wedding day confrontation. 2 days after my coffee with James, my phone exploded with messages. Melissa had called me 17 times. My parents had each left multiple voicemails. Even Vanessa had texted asking if I was okay and saying she was so sorry about everything. I finally answered my phone when my mother called for the 6th time. Jennifer Ann Mitchell, what have you done? Her voice was tight with tension. What are you talking about, Mom? James confronted Melissa about how she's been treating you. They had a huge fight. The wedding is still on, but barely. Your sister is devastated. My stomach dropped. I just told him the truth, Mom. Should I have lied? You should have kept family business in the family, she hissed. This was not your story to tell. But it was my story. It was about me, my body, my exclusion. If Melissa was ashamed of James knowing how she had treated me, perhaps she should have treated me better. The day of the wedding arrived with a dark cloud hanging over what should have been a joyful family event. I arrived at the church alone, dressed in the navy blue dress I had originally chosen, my head held high despite the anxious fluttering in my stomach. The ceremony was beautiful but tense. James looked handsome but troubled, his smile not quite reaching his eyes as Melissa walked down the aisle. My sister was radiant in her designer gown, but I caught her shooting daggers at me when she thought no one was looking. At the reception, I was seated at a distant table with distant cousins rather than at the family table. It was a petty move, but I refused to let it bother me. I chatted with my table mates, danced with a few of James's nice friends, and did my best to enjoy the celebration despite the circumstances. It was during the cake cutting that things fell apart. The MC called for the bride and groom, and as they approached the towering five-tier cake, James seemed to hesitate. He whispered something to Melissa. She shook her head vehemently. More whispers, more head shaking. The guests began to murmur uncomfortably. Finally, Melissa plastered on a bright smile, took the knife, and they cut the cake together. The picture of newlywed bliss except for the tension visible in both their bodies. As they fed each other the ceremonial first bites, I heard Melissa say, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, "I can't believe you're still hung up on this. It's our wedding day." James replied, his voice low but intense. "And I can't believe you're still not sorry for how you treated your own sister." The reception continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The bride and groom danced separately more often than together. James spent a long time talking with his parents, looking serious and conflicted. Melissa drank champagne with her bridesmaids, laughing too loudly and throwing occasional glares in my direction. I decided to leave early, slipping out during a group dance number to avoid any awkward goodbyes. As I waited for my Uber outside, Vanessa came rushing out. "Jen, wait," she called. "I owe you an apology." I turned, surprised. "For what?" "For going along with everything Melissa said, for not standing up for you." She looked genuinely remorseful. "I should have said something when she started excluding you from events. I didn't want to rock the boat." "It's okay, Vanessa. Really." "No, it's not." She hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know. After your meeting with James, he almost called off the wedding. The only reason they're going through with it is because of the non-refundable deposits and family pressure. He's really upset about how Melissa treated you, and—" She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "And what?" I prompted. "And he said it made him see a side of her he's not sure he can live with long term." My Uber arrived then, saving me from having to respond. As I slid into the back seat, I felt a complex mixture of vindication and guilt. I hadn't wanted to destroy my sister's relationship. I had only wanted her to acknowledge that her treatment of me was wrong. What I didn't know then was that the real drama was yet to unfold, and that Melissa's honeymoon would become the scandal that would ripple through our family and social circle for months to come. The honeymoon revelation. 3 days after the wedding, I was working a night shift at the hospital when my phone began buzzing incessantly in my pocket. It was 3 a.m., and multiple messages were coming through from various family members. My heart raced as I stepped into the break room to check. Late-night messages usually meant bad news. The first message I opened was from my cousin Alyssa. "OMG, have you seen James's Instagram story? Call me ASAP." Next was one from my mother. "Your sister is devastated. I hope you're satisfied with what you've done." Confused and concerned, I opened Instagram and went to James's profile. His story showed a series of photos. The first was a selfie of him looking somber on what appeared to be their honeymoon beach in Bali. The caption read, "When you fly 20 hours for your honeymoon only to discover your new wife has been cheating on you with her ex." The The next slide showed screenshots of text messages between Melissa and someone named Mike S., her ex-boyfriend from before James. The messages were dated throughout their engagement period, with the most recent being just 2 days before the wedding. They were explicit, arranging meetups and reminiscing about their encounters. The final slide was a photo of Melissa at their honeymoon resort, apparently taken without her knowledge, sitting at the hotel bar with a man who wasn't James. The timestamp showed it was taken just the previous evening. The caption, and apparently it couldn't even wait until after the honeymoon. Marriage over before it began. Flying home alone tomorrow. I stared at my phone in shock. Melissa had been cheating on James throughout their engagement and was continuing to do so on their honeymoon. It was inconceivable to me. My sister, who had always been so image conscious, so focused on creating the perfect life with the perfect partner, had been living a complete lie. My break ended, and I had to return to my patients, my mind swirling with this new information. By the time my shift ended at 7 a.m., James had deleted the Instagram story, but the damage was done. Screenshots had already circulated widely among wedding guests and friends. The scandal was out. When I finally got home and called my parents, my father answered, sounding exhausted. "Dad, what's going on? I saw James's posts." "It's a mess, Jen," he sighed. "Your mother and I have been on the phone all night with Melissa. She's hysterical, saying James had no right to publicly humiliate her like this. But did she actually cheat on him?" I asked carefully. There was a long pause. "She admits to texting with Mike inappropriately, but claims it was just flirting, nothing physical. She says the man in the honeymoon photo is just someone she was talking to at the bar while James was on a work call." Something in his tone told me he didn't entirely believe her. "The thing is, Jen," he continued hesitantly, "Melissa is blaming you for all of this." "Me? How could this possibly be my fault?" I was stunned. "She says if you hadn't poisoned James's mind right before the wedding, he wouldn't have been looking for problems or checking her phone. She says you turned him against her out of revenge for the bridesmaid situation." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's ridiculous. I never told James to check her phone or suspect her of cheating. I only told him how she treated me." "I know, honey, but Melissa is not in a rational place right now, and your mother—" He lowered his voice. "Your mother is inclined to believe Melissa's version." Over the next week, the story continued to unfold in dramatic fashion. James filed for an annulment. Melissa moved back in with our parents temporarily. Screenshots of James's Instagram story had made their way to several gossip accounts, spreading the scandal beyond their immediate circle. My sister's picture-perfect life was crumbling in a very public way, and somehow I had become the villain in the narrative. The blame game. 2 weeks after the honeymoon scandal broke, I received a formal email from Melissa's attorney requesting that I cease contact with both her and James as the annulment proceedings went forward. I hadn't actually reached out to either of them, so this seemed like an excessive measure, but I respected the boundary. What I couldn't avoid, however, was the flood of opinions from family members, mutual friends, and even colleagues who had heard various versions of the story. It seemed everyone had chosen a side, and many had chosen to blame me. If you hadn't meddled right before their wedding, they might have worked through their issues. My Aunt Carol scolded during a family birthday gathering I had almost skipped. "I hear you were jealous because she wouldn't let you be a bridesmaid," whispered a former high school classmate who worked at the same hospital. "You should have just worn the dress she wanted and kept the peace," advised my well-meaning but misguided grandmother. The narrative that had taken hold was infuriating. I had been jealous of my beautiful, successful sister. Hurt by being excluded from her bridal party, I had deliberately sabotaged her relationship with James. This sabotage had made James suspicious and controlling, which had driven Melissa into the arms of another man. Therefore, the cheating, the public exposure, the failed marriage, it was all ultimately my fault. The truth that Melissa had been cheating long before I ever spoke to James, that her messages with Mike dated back months before my coffee meeting with her fiancé, that she had continued this behavior on her honeymoon, seemed to get lost in the tangled web of family dynamics and loyalty. Even my parents were divided. My father, after seeing some of the evidence James had gathered, recognized that Melissa's infidelity was her own choice and not something I had caused. My mother, however, remained firmly in my sister's corner, insisting that there are always two sides to every story, and that James had overreacted to what was probably just innocent flirtation. The situation came to a head at a family dinner I had reluctantly agreed to attend 1 month after the wedding. It was the first time Melissa and I would be in the same room since the revelation, and the tension was palpable from the moment I arrived. My sister looked different. Her typically perfect appearance slightly disheveled, dark circles under her eyes poorly concealed by makeup. She barely acknowledged my presence as I entered our parents' dining room, focusing intently on her wine glass. Dinner proceeded in awkward silence for several minutes before my mother attempted to spark conversation with benign questions about work and the weather. Just as the tension seemed to be easing slightly, Melissa abruptly set down her fork with a clatter. "I can't do this," she announced. "I can't sit here pretending everything is normal when she destroyed my life." She pointed at me accusingly. "Melissa, that's not fair," my father began, but she cut him off. "Not fair? Do you know what's not fair? Having your sister go behind your back to poison your fiancé against you right before your wedding. Having him scrutinize your every move, check your phone while you're sleeping, humiliate you publicly during what should be the happiest time of your life." I took a deep breath, determined to remain calm. "Melissa, I only told James how you treated me regarding the wedding. I never suggested you were cheating or told him to check your phone. The fact that he found evidence of your affair has nothing to do with me." "It was not an affair," she shouted, tears now streaming down her face. "Mike and I were just friends. James completely misinterpreted those messages." "And the guy at the hotel bar in Bali?" I challenged. "Was that a misinterpretation too?" Her face flushed. "I was just talking to him. James had been on work calls our entire honeymoon. I was bored and lonely." Our mother reached out to pat Melissa's hand. "Sweetheart, these things happen in relationships. If James had been more understanding—" "Mom, stop," I interrupted, unable to contain my frustration any longer. "Melissa has been texting inappropriate messages to her ex for months. Those screenshots were clear. She was making plans to meet him while engaged to James. Are you really going to defend that behavior?" "You don't know the whole story, Jennifer," my mother replied coldly. "Then what is the whole story? Because from where I'm sitting, Melissa excluded me from her wedding because of my size, made me feel worthless and unacceptable, and is now blaming me for the consequences of her own actions." The table fell silent. My sister stared at her plate, tears still falling. My father looked pained. My mother's lips were pressed into a thin, disappointed line. Finally, Melissa spoke, her voice quiet but sharp. "You know what, Jen? Maybe I was wrong about the bridesmaid thing. Maybe I was too focused on having everything perfect. But at least I'm not so bitter and lonely that I have to ruin other people's happiness. You could have lost the weight if you really wanted to be in my wedding, but instead, you chose to destroy my marriage." I stood up, pushing my chair back from the table. "I didn't destroy your marriage, Melissa. Your choices did that. And for the record, I didn't need to change my body to be worthy of standing beside my sister on her wedding day. The fact that you thought I did says everything about you and nothing about me." I left without another word, walking out into the cool evening air with my heart pounding, but my head held high. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my sister and my mother without backing down or accommodating their warped perspective. It didn't fix the situation. It didn't change the fact that much of our family still blamed me for the wedding debacle. But it was a turning point for me, the moment I decided that their opinion of me mattered less than my own self-respect. Unexpected alliances and healing. 3 months after the disastrous family dinner, I was leaving work after a long shift when I spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench near the hospital entrance. It was James, looking tired but somehow more at peace than the last time I'd seen him. "James, what are you doing here?" He stood, offering a small smile. "Hey, Jen, I was hoping to catch you. Do you have a minute to talk?" We walked to a nearby coffee shop, the autumn air crisp around us. There was an awkwardness between us that had never existed before, the weight of everything that had happened creating an invisible barrier. "I wanted to apologize," James began after we'd settled with our drinks, "for putting you in the middle of everything with those Instagram posts. I was angry and hurt, and I acted impulsively. I never meant for you to take the blame." "It's not your fault," I assured him. "You had every right to be upset.